Welcome to Sitch Radio, discussing situations across multiple professional disciplines. Welcome to the first episode of I'd Podcast That. I'm guessing you've had the conversation. It goes something like this. I've got a great idea for a podcast. Maybe you had this conversation with yourself. Thoughts in the head. Maybe you entrusted this information with a family member or friend. You jump online. You read a few blog posts. They reinforce your thoughts. Anyone can be a podcaster. It's easy. You find a download, 6 simple steps in launching the perfect podcast. It's a little vague, so you dig a little more and you find a 35-page guide on how to start a successful podcast. You crack into this and you get a little overwhelmed. Equipment, software, microphones, software. What? I've got to learn new software? The time commitment involved. Do I need a website? SSL, CDN, GDPR. What does all this even mean? What? A website and a media host? Okay, now I'm a little confused. Let me put some more thought into this. The truth is, you can start a podcast. The one thing most guides don't cover are the foundations of what it takes to have a successful podcast. My name is Brian Colburn, and I'm the host of I'd Podcast That. We're going to start this podcast off discussing some of the foundations of having a successful podcast. So much is left out from so many of the guides that I myself have downloaded. I myself still refer to and use. And we're going to cover all of that here. To give you a little background, I'm involved with a podcast called EM Weekly. It's a super niche podcast focusing on the emergency manager. We've published over 70 episodes, actually launching a second show, EM Student, for the students of emergency management, those that are in college to learn the profession and learn the trade. Now, on EM Weekly, I handle the majority of the back end, ensuring the blog posts are up properly, SEO, building graphics, scheduling social media, building social media posts, promotions, things of that nature. So I've got a little experience with podcasting. Never been the front man, never been that voice on the air. However, what it takes to build, construct, promote, and push a weekly show, I've got some experience there. EM Weekly has never missed a week. I like to say we've never been late, and we've been early once because my partner, Todd DeVoe, the host of the show, accidentally pushed the wrong button and published instead of scheduled a show, and we aired a day early. So, again, never having been late, being early once. It takes a little more than just discipline to accomplish that. Todd works full-time. I work full-time. In addition to Todd working full-time, he also teaches part-time at 2 different universities. So scheduling time in our days to get the tasks done to produce a weekly show is a feat. And I attribute that to systems and workflows and procedures that we've put in place to communicate, to know when Todd is done with something and when I need to touch it, and when I'm done with it and Todd needs to handle the next step. And to get it out on a weekly basis takes just that. Workflows that are solid, procedures that are in place to help us accomplish this. And that's what I'm going to share with you over the next few weeks here. And then we're going to get into some fun stuff here on I'd Podcast That. On to today's discussion. We're going to talk about the skills needed to launch and produce a podcast. A lot of people think they can just buy a mic, push record, and lay down a show and all is good. But there's a little more to it than that. So the first thing I want to discuss is support. If you're in a relationship and or married, starting a passion project like a podcast is going to cut into their time. So, we're going to share some stories later on down the line about just how much time that is. And getting their support and buy-in is extremely important and going to make life a lot less stressful on you in the future. We're going to discuss things like budget, how much is it going to cost to run a show, what some of the options are there, And this goes back to some of the skills. So let's dive into the skills needed to have a successful show. One of the biggest things I think a lot of people don't realize is how much they're going to learn and the time commitment that is required to learn what they're going to need to know to have a successful show. So open your minds up. Be prepared to do a lot of reading and watch a lot of videos and maybe listen to other podcasts and things of that nature to acquire the skills needed. Your voice. What's going to happen if you get sick and you can't produce a show or 2 shows? So scheduling things out, recording in advance, batch recording, some tips and tricks there to afford you the time to go on a vacation to where you're not worrying about getting your show out for your audience. One thing that I'm going to stress throughout this is creating content that contains value for your audience. I do not ever want to put a show out because I need to get a show out. If it doesn't contain value for you, the listener, then I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting your time. And that's something I do not want to do. Time is such a commodity. So I want every episode of I'd Podcast That to have some takeaways for you, to not be a waste of time, but a show you look forward to listening to because you learn something new possibly, or you're entertained in some other way. That's a very, very important aspect of podcasting. Some of the other skills that are going to be required are obviously a basic understanding of audio recording, some basics of audio editing. That's one thing that you can learn yourself and come up with a show that's awesome, or you can sub it out. And we're going to talk about some of those options throughout this as well. I think one of the biggest frustrations for podcasters can be file management. And this is something that's rarely discussed. And having experience with photography and managing catalogs containing images, I've got a pretty decent workflow. So we're going to have an episode in regards to just file management and file structure. That way you can retrieve old episodes and edit them and re-upload them, or edit a commercial out and add a commercial for maybe a new sponsor to your show. But file management's very important. I know a lot of people have frustrations with, where did I save that? Where did I put that? I can't find that file. Well, if you utilize a system, doesn't have to be mine, but if you utilize a system, you'll never have that conversation again. You'll know exactly where your episodes are, where graphics are pertaining to that episode, where audio is pertaining to that episode. In addition to that, laying out a procedure to catalog what episodes are what, who sponsored them, at what cost is very important. It can be a valuable tool to look back on. Or I had a guest and he spoke about this. You can search for this and find episodes pertaining to this and guests that spoke on those episodes. Or I had a guest and his name was Bill. You'll be able to search Bill and find all the Bills you've had on your show. So as discussed, this is going to be a great foundations series, if you will, to start this off, which is going to relieve a lot of frustration in the future. And if you start off with systems and plans in place, you're going to have a much better time podcasting. Graphics, that's something that's rarely discussed, other than your cover art needs to be this large and it should contain the title and just some basics. But if you don't know how to create graphics, we're going to discuss options there. We're going to discuss free software you can download so you can build your own graphics. Again, everything I cover in this course, we're going to talk about free to paid options. And when it comes to free, some of this you're going to have to take on yourself until you can afford to bring somebody on to outsource this too. Again, if you want to start podcasting on a budget, this is a great place for you to be. And again, we're just laying down a solid foundation so things make sense. One other thing about having a solid foundation, it's going to allow you to bring somebody new into the fold, and they'll easily be able to understand where things are, what workflows are, where exactly they need to go to find out any information regarding the podcast you're creating. It has its benefits in the long run. So I hope you are picking up what I'm laying down. Hit that subscribe button. We're going to go on this journey together. Again, this is the first podcast I've been the front man on. All my experiences behind the scenes. So I've got that same anxiety you're probably feeling about recording my voice and pushing upload for the very first time and getting this show out there. By the time this airs, I will have 10 to 15 episodes in the can, already edited and ready to go. That's something else that I'm going to preach to you, is there's no need to run out and buy a hosting account and a media account right now. Let's record some of your audio and learn how to edit and practice and play before you spend a dime, other than on a microphone. So with all of that having been said, this is going to be a rather short episode. Again, my name's Brian Colburn. This is I'd Podcast That. Hit that subscribe button. Let's go down this journey together. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to Ian Weekly, and this is your host, Todd DeVoe speaking, and this week we're starting our education series with Capella University, and today we have with us Dr. Michael Kemp and Dr. Charles Hilleman. Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. We're going to get into the history of emergency management education, and then what the practitioners are, and just kind of all that stuff we've been talking about on the EM student side of this emergency management podcast. So, well, both of you, welcome to Ian Weekly. And Mike, you want to start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us. My name's Dr. Michael Kemp. I'm the faculty chair for the emergency management program at Capella University. We have both a master's program, a PhD program, and a professional doctorate at emergency management. My background is I've been in the public safety arena since 1993. Been working strictly for Capella since 2010 as the faculty chair. And academically, I was one of the first folks to come out with a PhD in emergency management. So I've been involved in the field quite a long time now.
So, Charlene, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about your background as well.
Hi, I'm Dr. Charlene Hilleman, and I am the Dean of the School of Public Service Leadership at Capella University. I've been with Capella now for 12 years. My educational background is in criminal justice and computer information systems, as well as public administration. So I spent many years working in the healthcare IT industry, and our sort of use of emergency management came around preparing for disasters based on the fact that I was living in Florida and working in Florida, and we often had to go through drills as well as real life preparedness based on the various storms, tropical storms, depressions, hurricanes, etc., that would head our way, and securing our information technology and ensuring that the redundancy and backups were in place.
So the history of emergency management education is kind of spotted, if you will. Realistically, it started back in the sociology degree programs, and then it kind of moved on to maybe some criminal justice added in there, and a little fire science added in there. And it depends on where you go. It's kind of doesn't even know where it sits sometimes in departments. I teach at a community college, and then I'm going to teach at UCI this fall, and both of those are now kind of in their own department, even though the UCI program still kind of falls into this facilities and general overall management position. How did, Mike, and I think we'll go back to Michael, how did we get from there to now where you see a bunch of programs where it's, there's a bunch of schools out there now that have emergency management in their own division or department, but we're still having sociologists teaching the programs, and now we're starting to see emergency managers come out with PhDs. Can you talk a little bit about that history and where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. It really all started, the first dissertation kind of laid down the foundation